Good morning. So last time I said I was going to spend some time exploring this book, Doing Imago Relationship in the Space-Between. Again, it's by Harville Hendricks and his wife, Helen Kelly Hunt, and it's really a clinician's guide. But I think it's some really important stuff because it's going to talk about the shift to the importance of the space between and how that ties into quantum theory, quantum physics. But anyway, today and next week I'll look at the preface, and in the preface they share a brief sort of intellectual autobiography explaining how Imago relationship came to be in the beginning. And they say, although we come from opposite ends of the social and economic spectrum, we have similar childhood experiences which contributed from the beginning to a very complex and conflicted relationship that provided the perfect, in brackets, although unplanned, laboratory within which we incubated ideas, invented new processes, and practiced new behaviors. So, in other words, Imago theory and practice really developed from their putting their own relationship in order. And for example, their first big discovery, the Imago dialogue, now what we call safe conversations, came about at a certain point early on in their relationship when Helen insisted, stop. One of us talk and the other listen, which eventually became the three-step process mirroring, validating, empathy, which has become Imago's central intervention. The second discovery was the necessity and power of zero negativity, of removing all negativity from the relationship. And this came later in the relationship. Actually, they were moving towards divorce. And one day they were going out on a date. They had been separated at the time. And they went to a bookstore and discovered a book on essays on relationships between persons with different astrological signs. And they said the description of the intense negativity of couples with our astrological signs accurately described our relationship. So again, it was Helen who proposed the elimination of all negativity. They sort of went cold turkey. And on a calendar, they would record days when either or both engaged in negative exchanges. And if there was a negative interaction between them, they would try to quickly restore a connection as soon as possible. And again, they found the positive effects pretty dramatic, and again, incorporated that into their Imago practice. And the third discovery was the affirmations process, and that developed more when they started to realize that couples often made significant progress by eliminating negativity, but then seemed somehow to fall back into old behaviors. And from their study of brain science, they realized that the brain needed something to fill the gap left by the elimination of the negative. So, and again, I'm not the expert here, but the brain somehow felt anxious, something was missing if there's no negativity, because that was a part of the reality going on. So something had to fill that gap. And so they went on to say, with repeated practice, couples learn that positive energy expressed as appreciations, acknowledging caring behaviors, engaging in surprises and spontaneous play, equipped the brain with the tools it needed to create the safe environment required by the survival directive. So if you eliminate the negative, but then you have to fill that space with positives. So the bottom line, I think, of these three discoveries was the importance of safety in a relationship. You know, you can thrive without safety, or you can survive, but you can't thrive. And the safe conversation process ensures safety as it takes things out of the power struggle. You know, the power struggle tends to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. And the validation step in the safe conversation process allows me to see reality from my partner's point of view. It can be quite different from mine, but it doesn't make it right and mine wrong. They're just different. And then, so that's the first thing. Then eliminating negativity is essential because negativity causes disconnect. And what we want is connection. And I'm going to explain that more as we go on, because that's more about the space between. And that's going to be a key, I think, the key insight of their work. And we'll talk more about that next week. And then the affirmation process replaces any negativity with affirmations. So they concluded that with these three elements in place, a near total reduction in anxiety and defensive behaviors took place, which led to their conviction that safety was the non-negotiable quality of a thriving relationship. And to me, it just makes sense. If you want a great relationship, you can't keep putting negativity in there. It has to be safe. Because if you don't feel safe, you feel anxious. If you don't feel anxious, hard to connect. Anyway, next week I'm going to explore. They continue on in the preface. What I think is really the revolutionary shift of their thinking, the importance of the space between, the shift from an individual paradigm to a relational paradigm, and from the relational paradigm to the quantum field. And that's, like I said, it's a it's a pretty heavy tome, but we'll see if we can work our way through it. Okay, so have a great week. See you next week.